Hi everyone, I'm Sean Lynch, the co-chair of Better Elections Now. You can find us on Facebook at Better Elections Now or email us at betterelectionsnow@gmail.com. And we're also on Twitter at better_election. What we're trying to do is to create a media push in the country to convince the presidential electors to choose Secretary Clinton when they meet in their state capitals on December 19th. We're reaching out to other groups, trying to find ways to get the message out there that the presidential election is not over. It isn't. Only step one is over, and that's the choosing of the presidential electors, that's what we did last Tuesday. And so the presidential election's not over. Donald Trump is just not qualified to be president based on his personality, his experience, his intellect, and his campaign. And the men and women around him are extremely dangerous, and they're intent on enacting a very dangerous platform in our perception of things at Better Elections Now. But the most important argument for this, of course, is that Secretary Clinton won the election. She won the popular vote. And as I've said to everyone who I've talked to recently, I am a Bernie voter, and working as hard as I have over the last week to try to build this campaign to convince the electors peacefully and civilly and respectfully, and only lobbying them through the media to please respect the national popular vote and please elect Secretary Clinton. She won the election. And what we had was a glitch. We had a glitch election, and things didn't go right. So we can fix it. We have a legal, constitutional, and plausible way to do that, and that is to respectfully petition those electors to please respect the national popular vote and please choose Secretary Clinton. Last night, at about 4:30 in the morning, while I was lying in bed, thinking about all that's happened and all that's coming if we don't act, which is what Better Elections Now is all about. It's taking action as citizens. We have a lot of work to do, and we need to get our act together. But anyway, last night I was thinking that one of the things that we also really need, probably more than ever, probably more than anything, putting this election aside, what you and I really need as Americans is national reconciliation. We were tricked into fighting each other by the people who profit in our society. And there are people that make a lot of money selling the politics of rage, which is why Better Elections Now rejects the politics of rage. We're going forward peacefully, civilly, respectfully. We respect our fellow citizens. All we want to do is present to them the notion that there is an escape valve, there's an escape hatch. And all it is asking those presidential electors to respect the popular vote. So we do have a way out, and that's what we're working for. But I was thinking that we have a much bigger problem, and that problem is we need national reconciliation. That there were people who made probably trillions of dollars, billions of dollars at least, on making all of us hate each other and not be able to speak to one another. And if you want to know a lot about the world in which we live in right now, read 1984. And if you don't want to read the whole book, go to the middle, where the character Winston reads to his girlfriend Julia the text of a book that is this sort of secret taboo book called The Theory of Oligarchical Collectivism. And that was written in 1948, and that very short part of 1984 explains exactly where we are, and it explains the world really, really well. If you want to understand the world, read that part of the book. You'll be astonished at how much it mirrors our society. But anyway, we need national reconciliation. And we have to learn how to talk to each other again. And we have to recognize that you don't have to hate someone that you disagree with. There are lines, of course. There are lines that we all have to draw as to what's acceptable and what's unacceptable. But I think there are people in our society that made so much money on convincing us that our enemy was our neighbor, and that our neighbor was our competition. Your neighbor is not your competition. Your neighbor is your family. That's what we forgot. We forgot that a country is supposed to be a family. And we have to remember that. I forgot that. Absolutely, I did. And this whole experience has been wanting me to rediscover that. And that's what we're trying to do at Better Elections Now, is try to find a way to make us a family again. You don't have to like your family, but you're supposed to love them, right? And what we have in the United States now is a very dysfunctional family. We forgot to respect one another. We forgot that you don't have to hate people because you disagree with them. We forgot how to talk to each other without screaming at each other. And again, I'm as guilty as anybody else. Absolutely, we're all guilty. Unfortunately, we're in the circumstance now in this country that all of us are guilty. We all failed as citizens. And what we hope to do, one of the things that I would like to try to do with Better Elections Now, is try to restore the civility that we lost by treating one another respectfully and with civility and decency, remembering that whether we wear a Republican suit or we wear a Democratic suit or a green suit or a socialist suit or a communist suit, those are just suits. Underneath those suits are Americans. And we forgot that. And we have to change that. So in thinking about all the things that we have to do in the next 31 days, we have to somehow get this media campaign going. We have to get the nation talking about the best way forward. The most plausible thing to do is elect Secretary Clinton, as she won the national popular vote. There are other options. The electors are free to choose anyone who is qualified under the Constitution to be president. So maybe a better way forward is if they choose a fusion ticket. Choose a respected Democrat as president, a respected vice president, Republican as vice president. We have options, but we need national reconciliation, and we have to learn how to talk to each other. And so what I thought of last night that made me record this video is maybe what we need to do as a country is look at the person next to us, whether it's your family or your friends or your coworkers. Maybe what we need to do is look at each other and stick out our hand and say, I am very sorry and I forgive you. I'm sorry and I forgive you. Maybe that's what we need to do. And that's not easy because we've had 40 years of dysfunction. All of our institutions have failed. They have. The parties have failed. Our leaders have all failed us. And we're going to have to stand up not as Democrats and Republicans, but as citizens. And the first thing probably we need to do before we even consider the election and before we worry about the election, probably the first thing we need to do is look at each other and say, I'm sorry and I forgive you. 6 words. Maybe 6 words can start the process. I'm sorry and I forgive you. It's a simple thing. Those of us who struggled with addiction issues know that you reach a point where you have to acknowledge your mistakes and apologize for them and try to make up for them. And that's where we are as a nation. We've made a tremendous amount of mistakes, tremendous amount in the last 40 years. And we have a lot of damage to undo. And we have a lot of people that we have to look in the eye and say, we're very sorry. We were misled. Because that's what happened to us. We were misled. And we can fix everything. We can change everything. The problems that we have are not unfixable. But they'll never get fixed if we don't start talking to each other. That someone from Maine and Mississippi should be able to have a pleasant conversation. And the fact that they don't is not really the fault of the population, other than not paying attention enough. That there are people in this country that profited in the billions by keeping us at each other's throats. And we have to say no to that. And so in my conception of the world, the only thing we can do is say, I'm sorry and I forgive you. I'm sorry and I forgive you. What else can we do? And then we stop shouting at each other. We start talking to each other. And we figure out what to do between now and December 19th. That if we take action, and if we recognize that what we need is a national timeout, that's what we need, timeout. All the partisans go to your different corners. Our systemic problems are so deep that we have to figure out a better way forward, and we cannot do that if we're shouting at each other. So what I would say right now, this is my first video. I realize there's a lot that I learned about how we got here and why we're here that I'm going to start sharing with you. I don't have any talents except teaching. It's the only thing I ever wanted to do. It's the only thing I do want to do. I'm only involved in this group, which I co-founded with many of my friends and former students, and everyone's working as hard as they can to get this message out. But when things get better, all I personally want to do is go back to teaching. And I think that one way that maybe I can finally get back to teaching instead of all of this is if we all look at each other and say, I'm sorry and I forgive you. So in the next 31 days, I will try to tell you in brief videos what I have learned in my study over the last 10 years as to how we got here and why. And at the bottom of it all, we're all to blame. All of us are to blame. Every one of us. It doesn't matter what party we voted for or if we voted or who we voted. We all forgot how to be citizens, and we have to change that. And so I think national reconciliation is the way to start. And so if I were you, I would look to your family and to your friends and your coworkers and your fellow students and everyone and just say, I'm sorry and I forgive you. And let's see what happens. Let's see if that works. So we have a lot of work ahead of us, a lot of work. There's a lot of damage to be undone. There's 40 years worth of damage to undo. The Democratic Party failed. The Republican Party failed. Congress is paralyzed and corrupt to the core. The courts are dysfunctional. The executive is dysfunctional. These things happen. I'm a historian, I know that things end sometimes where you get to a point where you've got to make a major change, and that's where we are. We have to make a major change immediately. Let's use this moment, this bad, fraudulent, mistaken election. Let's use that moment to have a national conversation where we all decide how to go forward. And there's no reason why the electors can't talk to one another. There's no reason why we can't address the electors at all, peacefully, civilly. Never in person, never in person. But if we do that, we can make a big difference. And that's why I joined Better Elections Now. Whether or not you want to join our group, please do what you can do. There's a lot that we can do as individuals. But as I said, let's try. I'm sorry and I forgive you. Let's try it. What do we have to lose at this point? What do we have to lose? So I thank you very much for listening to me. For all of our members, I think we're up to about 399 members. To all of you who are working, thank you. We have a lot of work to do. Don't despair. Don't give up hope. We have a legal, constitutional, plausible way out of this. We just have to convince enough people. That's all. And we can do that with peaceful petitioning. So keep working. We've got 32 days left to try to make a difference, and you can't lose hope. You can't give in to despair. Despair is like a drug, and you can get addicted to it, and I know, because I was there myself for a long time. So you have to avoid giving into despair. You have to avoid giving into anger or fear. This is the time where we need courage, and courage or bravery is not the absence of fear. Bravery is not the absence of fear. It's acting in spite of your fear, and that's what we all need to do. And there are times when I'm afraid. There are times that I despair or I worry, and we don't have enough time. We don't have enough time to worry about it. So don't give in to despair. Do something every day We have to avoid this slide into fascism because it's coming. This is fascism. And we can't normalize Trump either. We can't normalize him. The media wants you to normalize him. And we can't do that. We can't, because he's not normal. So we have 32 days left. Do what you can do. That's all we can do as stand up as citizens, is do what we can do. In the coming days, I'll post more videos sort of talking about what I learned in trying to figure out how we got where we are. And if you like them, share them. If you don't like them, don't share them. If you see a mistake in my logic, tell me. I'll fix it. I'll adjust. But I really have studied as hard as I can in the last 10 years to understand all of this. And so I'm going to start, I think the way that I can best contribute to better elections now and to changing the path we're on is to educate and to say, look what I've learned. So I'll be doing that from now until the day before the Electoral College meets. And if you like them, share them. If you don't, don't. I'm sorry and I forgive you. Let's try it. I wish you all a very good night. And thank you for listening. I appreciate it. 32 days. Work hard.